Hello, I'm your host and council member, Rick Robinson. Welcome to our latest episode of O'side Demystified. I'm glad to be back in the studio here at KOCT, our local television station. My guest for this program is someone you have met in a previous show. This department director oversees many vital functions. Today, we're going to focus on just one of them. I will be right back, and fair warning, this conversation will get a little trashy.
This is a KOCT news brief, and I'm Trisha Duffy. In Oceanside, your water undergoes rigorous testing, ensuring it remains the highest quality. The city's water utilities department has a team of over 150 employees, and their commitment ensures that every drop of water delivered to your tap is safe and clean. The water utilities director, Lindsay Leahy, has proudly announced that the 2023 Water Quality Report confirms Oceanside's water meets all safety regulations. You can access the full report at ci.oceanside.ca.us.
Welcome back, everyone. And as I said, our guest today is somebody that we have had on before, Lindsay Leahy, our Director of Water Utilities for the City of Oceanside. But today we're going to focus a little bit on the other side of the utilities, which is our trash or solid waste management. So good afternoon, Lindsay.
Thank you for having me, Councilmember Robinson.
Oh, Rick, please. Okay, so let's get into the trash a little bit here, and we'll try not to have too many trash jokes as we go along. But can you explain to everybody what the city's role is in regulating and managing our solid waste?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So in the state of California, the cities are responsible for handling all solid waste and recycling services within their service area. So the Water Utilities Department has a solid waste and recycling division, and we oversee all of the state mandates to ensure that the City of Oceanside is compliant with the state regulations in collecting and disposing of solid waste, recycling, and green waste.
So let's talk about that just a little bit, what solid waste really means, because I think it's kind of expanded over the years. Can you, for our audience, explain when we talk about solid waste management, what things are you dealing with? And then maybe we can get into detail on those a little bit.
Yeah, so in the City of Oceanside, and now it's going to be a state regulation to have very specific colored cans. So you would have your gray can, which is anything that would go to landfill. Your blue can would go to recycling. Your green can historically was just for yard waste, but now we will be using that for food scrap collections. If you are, and those are for a single family resident, if you are a commercial business or a multifamily property, you would actually have a brown bin, which would be used for compost. And that's where your food scraps would go into that brown bin, and that's collected separately for those commercial and multifamily customers. So solid waste and recycling kind of encompasses all of those different waste streams.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the food waste, but we'll get there in a second. One of the questions that I get every now and then is why waste management is our only hauler in the city. Can you go through that process a little bit, how we determine who's going to pick up our trash?
Yes. So the City of Oceanside uses a franchise agreement. So we have a long-term agreement with a single provider. And many cities have this, and there's some benefits to having a franchise agreement. One of them is it reduces the number of large vehicles on our streets. So there's less wear and tear on our streets, less emissions. If you were to have multiple haulers hauling throughout the city, you would have redundant services there and redundant vehicles on the road. It also allows the city to monitor and make sure that we're in compliance and only having to contract with a single provider. Most cities in the state of California do have franchise agreements. There are some that don't and allow for each property to choose the hauler they want to contract with. But again, there adds some redundancy, and we have less consistent services potentially if you have multiple contractors rather than just having the one franchise. to dig into kind of how we got here.
Yeah, that's
Is Waste Management has been our hauler for years. A few years ago, the city put out a request for proposals to have a competitive process to make sure that we were going to have the best options and the best services at the best price for our customers within the city. So we had 2 haulers that proposed on that, and through actually a multi-year process, of evaluating the different proposals as well as presenting to City Council at, I believe it was 2 different workshops. The City Council then selected Waste Management to be awarded the franchise agreement for the next few years. That agreement is a 7-year long agreement. We do have the option to extend that for 3 years for a total of 10 years. And that agreement started January 1st of 2024, so of this year.
so 7 years potentially 10 years seems like a rather long time. Is there an advantage to having these long contracts?
Yes, so the 7-year term allows Waste Management to kind of spread some of their costs to provide these services. So our contracts require that they have a specific number of equipment and facilities that they have to maintain and or potentially even procure new items. So this allows them to actually purchase those items and then use them for their lifespan. For example, if you were to buy a new bin might last 10 plus years. If you only had a contract every 3 years, you might be replacing that contractor every few years, and then that new contractor would have to replace that infrastructure or that material. So this allows that material cost to be spread over the life of the contract. So there are some cost advantages to the ratepayers for that, and it allows Waste Management to amortize the costs and the expenses over the term of the agreement.
Now, we don't have a landfill in Oceanside, but do you know where our trash goes once it's in the truck?
So Waste Management takes anything for our landfill, so the gray bins, and it goes to Carlsbad to a transfer center ran by another hauler. That hauler would then take the materials to their contracted landfill.
Those transfer stations, and I think a lot of people in Oceanside have probably been to Carlsbad because it's open to the public.
Correct.
But just like we're charged to dump, our Waste Management hauler is charged to dump, correct?
Correct, yeah. So that is a contract they have to have with that transfer station. So they are paying fees to take our materials to that facility.
When we did this new contract, were there a lot of things that people maybe contacted the city about things being different?
Yes. So this new contract that began January of this year has a lot of changes, and a lot of them are surrounded and have been initiated because of new state laws that have come into play. And these laws became effective January 1st of this year. Some of the minor changes that I'll talk about and people probably noticed, is we transferred billing services from the city to Waste Management. Oceanside, up until this last year, was one of the only cities that billed for these services. And so what this allowed was, one, for city staff we would have less city staff being able or having to oversee that and transferring money to Waste Management. This way, customers can bill directly to Waste Management and contact them for their needs and services, rather than calling the city for assistance and then the city having to call Waste Management. So it kind of took out the middleman for customers to contact.
No, I was just going to say, Waste Management, are they local here in the city? If people need to get in touch with them, do they have offices right here in the city?
Yes, they do. They have their main offices are off of Oceanside Boulevard, and they have some of their facilities off of Industry Street as well. So they are local. They part of their agreement is they are to have customer service staff that are specific for Oceanside customers, and we do have representatives that work in the Oceanside office here off of Oceanside Boulevard as well.
And if somebody's trying to get a hold of them but can't or has a problem, can the city assist? Do we have information on our website or our customer care line where they're able to help?
Correct. Yes. If any customers are having trouble getting a hold of Waste Management, we're happy to facilitate that and make sure that the customers are getting help. They're welcome to call the customer care line at 760-435-4500, and they will get you in touch with the Solid Waste and Recycling Group, and then we can help facilitate any of those conversations or needs. But we do recommend to contact Waste Management first and make sure that they're able to help you. If they're not able to, then you can contact the city. We're happy to help.
And I imagine when the billing switched, there probably was some issues anytime we make those kind of changes. Would you say most of those issues have been resolved, or do you still get a lot of calls about billing?
Most of those issues have been resolved. Yes, there were some hiccups and missed billings, but they were resolved rather quickly. And they were just to a very select few customers. But yeah, that has fully transitioned, and we've been hearing less concerns or missed billings since last year.
And I know one of the things that came up recently across my desk was about the billing. There was a fee or a billing fee. I don't know if that's something you can talk to or.
Yeah, so Waste Management, through acquiring the billing services, is using a third-party payment system, and part of that system is they're being charged. Waste Management's being charged a fee for the use of credit cards and debit cards. So for residential customers, there's a transfer or a fee that would be associated to pay your bill with a credit card or debit card. I believe it's $1.99 for residential customers, and I think it's $10 for commercial customers. That fee is to cover the cost to use the credit card or debit card. Customers do have the ability to not incur those fees by using an ACH transfer through online payments, or they can mail in a check. But if you're using a card, those would be fees added to the charge. But you would need to accept those fees and acknowledge that you're being charged them before being charged.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I know that came up a few times. I don't know if I cut you off when we were talking about services and things like that in the agreement. So did we hit all those things, or?
We did not. There are a lot of new services. So we had mentioned at the beginning the collection of food scraps, and that's probably the largest single change that customers would see and have experienced so far to date. And what that is there's a new law that came into effect, and its goal is to divert about 75% of the waste that's currently going to or has historically gone to landfills, and to divert it to its correct waste stream. And so part of this is the collection and diversion of food scraps from landfills. And so with that additional either brown bin that our commercial and multifamily customers are seeing, or adding food scraps to your green can, what that is allowing us as a city and the whole state to do is to divert that food scrap from the landfills where it can actually be used in a beneficial way. So that material can be used for compost, or it can be used to potentially even create electricity, which is something that the city is looking at doing and considering doing, is actually using those food scraps to create electricity to lower some of our costs to our customers in the long run. So that's probably the single biggest change that you would see. There's a lot of other little things that have occurred with that and that we're working on. There's additional reporting requirements that the city's having to do with the state, and so Waste Management's having to do with us. But the biggest change would be the food scraps that customers will witness.
And as I understand it, the issue with the food scraps is mostly to get out of landfill because of the methane production. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So this allows us to take, and I believe the green waste recycle is still going local here in the El Corazon site for processing?
The residential green waste, yes, stays local. It goes to El Corazon and is processed and composted there. Our commercial and industrial multifamily, because it's in a brown can,
Right.
that is going to the LA Riverside area to be processed. And if we were to proceed with a food scrap energy project in the city, we would actually have that material get processed, returned back to Oceanside, and then utilize that in our wastewater treatment process to create energy.
That's one of the, just about the wastewater, that's one of the projects that you're kind of gearing up for. Is that correct?
Yes, we're currently evaluating the feasibility of it to see if it makes sense financially, and that we would have the return on investment to create the project, essentially.
So we're always looking at ways to save money or to, like you said, return funds that maybe we spend elsewhere to get that return on investment back here in the city.
Correct. So part of the new state laws is the cities are actually required to procure or utilize some of these food scraps within their service areas. So by bringing that food scrap material back into the city, it kind of kills two birds with one stone. One, we would see the benefits of the energy production, so we would reduce our use of SDG&E power. But then two, it would allow us to comply with that procurement requirement from the state. If we don't do that, we as a city would be required to purchase compost material or other reusable materials from that food scraps and use it somewhere within our city boundaries, which may be restrictive just because we don't maybe have as many places to put compost.
And I want to stay on the food scrap thing just for a moment, just because one, when it started, and I think there was plenty of written notification mailed to households and stuff, and I know in our house we got it, and then all of a sudden one day the little plastic bin showed up, and I think people collectively just kind of went crazy over that thing, and it was like, what are we going to do with this? And there was a lot of, I will speak for our house, the Robinson household had a big discussion about, do we do this or not, or how are we going to do it? Now that it's been around for a bit, we are using it more and more, but there are ways around just keeping that on your sink. And that was given to people so they had a place to easily transfer food scraps from their house to their bin.
Correct.
But there are other things people could do. And you gave me a great idea, and I just want to share it because it's what we do now, is to freeze some of these products. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So this is something that I do in my household as well, but we have that little plastic bin in our freezer. And as I'm cooking throughout the day or throughout the week, I'm actually placing the food scraps in that bin in the freezer. So that is allowing those to freeze and not to start to degrade and to rot. So that's reducing any smells and, not allowing any insects or anything. And then also on trash day, then I just take that material and then I put it into my green bin that day. So again, it's not sitting out there for the entire week and just rotting and creating smells and attracting insects and rodents. So that's allowed me to that's what's worked in our household. There's other ideas.
We use a clean bag and we put it in a clear bag and freeze it, and then
yes,
on that day take it out,
And you are allowed to use and put clear bags into the green bin for single family households. If it's an opaque bag, meaning you can't see through it, it would be considered a contaminant by waste management. So that entire bag's contents would just be disposed of. But if it is a clear bag, you can put that in the green bin with your food scraps in it. Or you can use a paper bag to, again, kind of separate it and then have all your food scraps in that paper bag and then put that in your green bin as well.
Yeah, and it has come up in several conversations about, the cleanliness of food scraps and how you put them in your green waste bin and stuff. And I think there's many things that people could do. One we talked about is layering. We try and wait for our green waste to go into the bin first, and then we put some of the food waste in and then layer it on top, more green waste if we have that. Or, like I said, we wait until the actual day of pickup and just dump the frozen stuff in there and it's gone. And that does help with the reduction of the odors and things. Anything else that has come up that would help people?
Yeah, and we understand that, those bins might get a little gross sometimes or dirty and have maybe an odor. And this is for all bins, not just the green waste. But part of the contract with Waste Management allows for all residential customers to get their bins swapped out once a year. So if that's something that customers are seeing that they have insects or there's just odors with the bins, that they can call Waste Management and schedule for their bins to be replaced. And they can do that every year, once a year. There are other third-party services. I haven't personally used them, but I've seen the flyers that they'll clean the bins. Obviously, that's an extra cost to customers, so they can do that if they'd like. But I would recommend at least utilizing Waste Management's bin trade out if they haven't done so yet this year.
Right. And if your bin gets damaged or broken, you can do the same thing. If you can't wheel it or something like that,
correct.
You call them.
Yes.
Before we leave the recycling part of food scraps, the mulch that's created, that's free to Oceanside residents, is it not?
They do a couple free pickups every year, and it's free if you're going to load it yourself. Okay. So there are days where you could go every day and load it yourself. So load buckets or trucks yourself. They do mulch and compost pickup days. I think it's once a month where you can go as an Oceanside resident and get a larger load, and they'll load it for you, and it might be just a flat, very nominal dollar amount. But you can go as an Oceanside resident and get large quantities as well, loaded into your vehicle or your trailer if you want at any time as well. But yeah, they do offer services for free, compost, mulch. They have multiple products that you can use for your flower beds and vegetable gardens, or just, your landscaping.
So it is a good return for the home gardener or people that are planting to go there and pick up their stuff.
Yes, I'm not a gardener myself, but I'm told that it's a good material.
One of the other things that I know they do, because we take advantage of this, is large item pickup. Can you talk a little bit about the large item pickup, how that might work?
Yeah, so this is a great service that we try to recommend to customers. So again, part of the contract is Waste Management will pick up 5 times a year. Each residential customer gets 5 pickups a year, and each large item pickup, they can put out up to 5 individual items. So that's up to 25 individual large items to pick up at their curbside. This is a great service so that the customers don't have to haul anything or load their truck, unload their truck at a location. They just have to call Waste Management ahead of time, at least 24 hours before, or 1 business day before their service day pickup, and bring the item out to the curb. Waste Management will ask what the item is, because sometimes there's requirements, like for mattresses, you have to have a bag over your mattress or they won't pick it up. But they'll want to know what those items are, and then that way they're making sure that they're also picking up the correct item that might be outside.
Yeah, I've seen the truck, and we've used them, and they pick up really large items, furniture, sofas, whatever yard items. They're really good about it. But I would encourage everybody to call maybe even more than 24 hours ahead of time, just to make sure they have the notice to come out and pick it up on your trash day.
And those are just the large item pickup days. There are also in the contract, there are twice a year a landfill week and a donation week that customers can utilize. Right. And so same thing, you can call ahead and schedule a pickup, and the DAV, the Disadvantaged American Veterans, will come and pick up those items for donation or other items for landfill, which are great. And those are not limited to the number of items that can be picked up.
Right. You can put just about anything out for that.
Correct.
They're going to want to know generally what you have. But,
correct.
I think we hit a little bit on it, but about the concerns that customers have about cost increases and what the future looks like for our trash pickups and stuff. What do you see there? What do you know there?
So there was a large increase that came with this new contract that customers saw January of this year. And those new increases came primarily around the new services that are being required by the state. So there's a lot of changes that the state's required for the food scrap pickup It required additional labeling on the cans and notifications. Again, we as a city and waste management have to monitor the contents that are being distributed, or picked up. But on top of that, with the food scraps especially, those are having to go to a separate facility to be processed. So there was a large increase that customers saw beginning January 1st of this year. But those should be pretty mellowed out and shouldn't be expected to have that large of increases moving forward. This was in order to be able to facilitate the new laws that were coming down from the state. The franchise agreement is very prescriptive about new increases that come from waste management. The contract allows for a CPI adjustment every year up to 5%, so it is capped at 5%. And so waste management has to go through a process every year and provide their costs to the city. And then the city would present that cost increase request to city council, again, capped at 5%. And then city council would have to adopt the new rates to be effective the following calendar year. So you could expect to see staff and waste management coming for that request towards the end of this year. And that would be through a normal presentation at council.
Right. So people, if they wanted to come to council and talk, they could.
Correct.
We'll see what happens.
Yes.
When you talk about compliance from the state, how does that work? I mean, are there actual compliance checks is that required that the city go look at people's trash cans to see if we're compliant?
So that is part of what the state is requiring of city staff, yes. We are doing or will be doing compliance checks where we will be looking in cans to see if people are putting waste streams in the right cans. On top of that, what they will do is kind of measure on the collection side based on weight, tonnage, to see if those waste streams are increasing. So we would expect to see from residential customers that there would be maybe a heavier weight stream coming from the green cans, and we would expect to also see less tonnage in our gray bins. And so that's how we'll be having to monitor and be reporting to the state to ensure that we are complying. What the state will also require is that if we're not meeting those numbers, they're going to want to see how we are educating our customers to make sure that they are complying and are aware of the new laws.
And I know from an education perspective, your department often has the green Oceanside canopies up, and they're out there, and they have all kinds of goodies they give away to remind us about it. But we do a lot of outreach, public outreach on solid waste and other things, right?
Yes, that's correct. So we have our Green Oceanside team tries to educate on all of the different environmental programs the city has, but one of the big ones is the solid waste recycling program. So there's a lot of videos, you'll see flyers. We do try to be at as many of the public events as possible. But then we also have strategic programs that are going to be going around to be getting flyers out and getting more information out to customers, as well as partnered with waste management and having waste management staff going out and educating customers to make sure that they know what waste stream is going where.
And I just want to follow up to put people at ease when we talk about staff. If and when they're out looking for compliance, this isn't an enforcement type thing, or there are not going to be citations on the cans, are there?
There is a requirement by the state that they want us to cite if customers are not complying. However, that is the last thing that we as a city want to be doing.
Right.
We would be going to every length to educate and try and get compliance before having to go a route of citing anyone. So that's probably the very last straw if things are egregious, but not something that we're intending on implementing on a regular basis.
If somebody has a pizza box in the wrong thing, we're not going to be going
Correct.
knocking on the doors.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I just know that'll come up, and I want to be clear about that. Well, we only have a minute or so left, so I just want to again thank you for coming in. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to add about Your department, whatever's going on?
I would just say that new things are changing every day with the state requirements, and we're working to implement this contract. So if customers have any questions, they can reach out to Waste Management or to city staff. We're happy to answer those questions. The franchise agreement is available online. You can find that on the public records request site for the City of Oceanside, the contracts with Waste Management or WM. And then if anyone's interested to look up the laws, the main law overriding all of these new requirements is SB 1383. So again, probably a not so fun read, but if anyone was interested in what that's all about, that's the new law. And the agency that work for the state of California is Cal Recycle. So they essentially are the ones making these rules for the cities to enforce and to regulate. But we are happy to answer any questions. We know there's a lot of changes, and no one likes change but a baby with a wet diaper. So we're all working to be compliant together.
What can do you put that diaper in, though? That's the thing I'm not sure about.
That would go in your landfill.
Okay, there you go. Well, with that, we're going to call this a wrap, and I want to thank you for coming in and speaking today about all things trash. And again, I know there's a lot to it, and a lot of times we don't give it enough thought as residents in our businesses. So again, thank you for coming in and joining us. And folks, we'll be back right after this.
As this commerce machine rolls on, things will be thrown out. It's a byproduct of productivity. We're a family of 42,000 here to help you manage it. Doing what it takes to minimize waste, recycle it, even power our trucks with it. So long as things are thrown out, we'll be there to take care of it the right way. It's not just waste collection, it's waste management.
Thank you for taking time out of your day to learn a little more about your city and the very important issue related to trash collection and recycling. While fees for services are controversial, I think we can agree that trash pickup services are essential for a safe, clean, and healthy city. I want to offer my sincere thanks to all those hardworking men and women who work every day to pick up, sort, and process our solid waste and recycling. When I was young, I remember when trash pickup required 2 or 3 people to drive the truck and pick up our heavy trash cans. I would often go out to the curb and say hello and thank you as they did their work. Today, technology makes it possible for a driver and their truck to pick up and dump cans and dumpsters. One thing that hasn't changed is the ability for us to once in a while go out to the curb, wave, and thank those who haul away our trash. Until next time, remember that Oceanside is a great place to live, work, and play. Don't let it be a mystery. I'm your council member, Rick Robinson.